Hey Emma,
Yes, Madelyn.
what do you call it when someone smart, like ourselves, tries to battle against getting distracted by your phone when you should be working or doing something productive?
I don't know. What do you call it?
Big brain ex machina. Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
You missed Emma making all these like, ooh, wow, facial expressions at me.
I was trying to do like the crowd goes wild, ooh,
Nice
without
try.
making the noise.
Yeah, I don't believe that for a second. Or if you were, it was a sarcastic crowd goes wild.
Oh yeah, I didn't mean it wasn't sarcastic. Just
Oof. I'm your big brain host, Madelyn.
my brain gets lighter by the day host, Emma.
And this week on Talk This, we're going to be talking about Big Brain Academy and Demon Ex Machina.
We sure are.
Two games that more or less could not be more different.
Yeah. Although we picked some pretty light games this week, unfortunately, so we might have to go on our tangent lands a little bit more than
Oh,
usual.
don't worry. I'm prepared. I'm prepared for tangents galore with
Good.
these. I will say that sometimes our mashups fail because the games are too similar. So we can't, that can't really be said this week.
That's true.
So are you ready to train your brain in minutes a day?
Oh yeah, I'm ready.
I think that might be the Brain Age slogan, but I'm prepared to talk about both anyway.
We did own both.
Yes. So let's talk Big Brain Academy. Big Brain Academy, as you may or may not know, is a Nintendo DS game released in 2005 in Japan and then 2006 in North America. It has a sequel for the Wii, Big Brain Academy Wii Degree, released in 2007. And Big Brain Academy is part of this couple of years where brain training games were big.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like that too, but then I also couldn't think of any that weren't Big Brain Academy or Brain Age.
I guess that's true. I feel like it leads up to the same kind of quantification and games are good and games are accessible that then finds its kind of apex in Wii Fit a couple of years later.
Yeah.
But you're right, that I saw something called Hot Brain, which sounds
Don't
like a
love
different
that.
kind of game, but also was some kind of brain training game.
When you're smarter, does your brain get more attractive? Is it symbolized by...
That would be a fun little twist, wouldn't it? On this genre. Oh yeah, you got a supermodel brain. And that's unlike the stereotype, that would be an indication of you a very smart brain.
Yes, right.
So it's tearing down stereotypes and somehow is like a T for teen, a brain training game.
Yeah, I mean, tearing down stereotypes, but also possibly reinforcing some of them at the same time.
Can't win. Can't win with the brain training hottie game. I'll put that mashup aside. Anyway, Big Brain Academy. Basically, look, to some extent, if you were at all plugged into games with Nintendo DS, you probably heard of Brain Age or Big Brain Academy in some capacity. But it's a puzzle game where you do all these kind of brain teaser puzzle tests, and it measures your brain mass, quote unquote, in 5 categories: think, analyze, compute, identify, and memorize. And you look like you're going to say something.
No?
Never mind. That was my brain going into hyperdrive. My analyzing skills there went down in mass. And so, much in most of these brain training games, of which we just said there are exactly 3, but whatever, bear with me, there's like a test mode and there's a practice mode. So in the practice mode, you can just play all these mini games, and the conceit in Big Brain Academy is that your brain literally gets bigger as you get smarter. So you're striving for like a Jimmy Neutron head, basically.
Yeah, this is not actually based in science, just in case you're aware.
Yes, unlike Brain Age, which we will probably talk about, because they're very much, even though they
that's your they do it like Wii Fit, right?
So in Brain Age is theoretically based on real science. We can talk in a little bit about how real that real science is, but Brain Age is trying to tell you that you can have a more youthful brain or an older brain, and that means something. Here in Big Brain Academy, the scale of like how many grams each section of your brain weighs is not meant to be a literal thing. That would be concerning if your brain mass went up and down each day. That would probably be something to get checked out by a non-Nintendo DS source.
Yeah. And I can attest, even though I was joking that my brain was getting lighter, it feels very heavy recently, but I also feel like I'm getting dumber. So, clearly, it's not related.
Someone should do a study on you, is what you're saying. But yeah, in Big Brain Academy, I remember this a little bit from playing it. I was looking at some of the games. There's like a balancing game where they have like different animals on scales, and you have to decide which one is the heaviest or which one is the lightest.
Right.
There's all sorts of kind of math computation games.
There's just ones where it's just like, click on the numbers that are going up in the correct order in fastest or whatever.
And Big Brain Academy, unlike its, brother game, Brain Age, doesn't rely on the DS microphone to the same degree. It was a big part of Brain Age, which, again, if you're not familiar, Brain Age, Train Your Brain in Minutes a Day, it came out a few months before Big Brain Academy, but even though those two games feel like they should be natural competitors, it actually seems like it's just Nintendo doubling down on the brain training market.
You gotta get those studious kids somehow with your fake brain training.
Well, not just the studious kids. So both Brain Age and Big Brain Academy were part of, what was it called? It's like the Foundation Games. Like there's some kind of Nintendo games for all people. Touch Generations. They were part of the Touch Generations line at Nintendo, which the more I say it out loud,
I don't like it.
The more I maybe don't love that branding. But they were part of it, Touch Generations, which was this kind of line of games from Nintendo that were meant to appeal to a larger audience. And this starts kind of pre-Wii, I believe, or right as the Wii is coming out. So it's right as Nintendo is really pivoting hard into, let's get the non-gamers playing games.
Yeah.
Touch Generations is mostly a lot of kind of puzzle games, from what I could tell. Both of these brain training games, like a Sudoku game, Tetris is part of it, like a golf simulator. Basically any game that you could think of that, might be similar to a mobile game that your middle-aged people that would play, is probably part of Touch Generations on the Nintendo DS. And hopefully that's the last time I'll say that phrase.
I mean, it makes sense if you're designing games just off the bat to appeal to anybody, that you wouldn't want something that necessarily takes, like, precision button pressing, right? So then the puzzle genre sort of falls into something where you don't necessarily need a mastery of the controls of the controller.
Oh, definitely. And I will say, I read some contemporaneous reviews of Big Brain Academy, and a lot of people's, not necessarily complaints, because for the most part, people reviewing the game were obviously people that were interested in games, and so they aren't the non-gamer demographic that's being targeted. But They did have a lot of thoughts on how, again, I'm just going to spend this whole episode talking half about Brain Age, even though that's not the game, because they're just sort of two halves of the same coin.
They're talking about the general brain game subgenre that was on the Nintendo DS.
Yeah. Brain Age just got a Switch version. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, I remember seeing that, yeah.
So you can still train your brain.
I could do it.
If you're worried about your brain getting heavy, or whatever you're saying, slim down your brain.
I'm very afraid of how featherlight it would tell me my brain is.
Well, Big Brain Academy is years, is age anyway, so... I'm sorry, not Big Brain Academy. Whoo, boy, I need some brain training.
Oh, I need some brain training, because I definitely heard it as Big Brain Academy had a Switch version. Not
Maybe
Brain
I
Age.
said that. I can't remember. I should be playing more brain training games. My memory, it's gone. It's shot.
Oh, no! Maybe they both do. I wonder. There's some brain game on Switch. Just search Brain on the Nintendo eShop.
It's definitely Brain Age that has a Switch game. I don't know what I said.
Yeah, I feel like I remember seeing Big Brain Academy had a Switch version. Not Brain Age. Like at a Direct or something.
Maybe they don't actually both exist. Maybe it's a Berenstein Bears situation here.
No, because I remember the box art of both of them pretty clearly, so I think they both exist.
Anyway, I got completely sidetracked. What I was trying to say is that many of the reviews expressed as a concern the fact that Big Brain Academy looks much more game-like. Like, the design is a lot more cutesy than the pretty bare bones, apart from the scary floating head.
I mean, it's got Mr. Lobe.
Yes, it has Mr. Lobe as opposed to floating head version of a neuroscientist. So I suppose you can take your pick. But I was interested to see a lot of the reviews were like, oh, this looks more like a game. Might be hard to get my dad to play this.
What about the universal appeal of Mr. Lobe?
I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, he looks like a worm wearing glasses and a graduate cap. What's weird about that?
Universal appeal. Universal appeal.
That's what I want my mascot character to look like. Just like sort of a beige toe with glasses.
Gets me excited for learning, let me tell you. So these two games were some of the first edutainment games to really break through to the masses, seemingly. I couldn't find particularly updated sales figures for Big Brain Academy, but it did sell like 5 million copies in 2 years. And Brain Age has sold like 18 million copies over the series' lifetime. So people really want to train their brains. But are they really training their brains? Nintendo of America, for what it's worth, won't throw their support behind any scientific claims about these brain training games. However, there have been some studies that show kind of mixed things. I don't know if you looked at any of these.
I didn't look at any of the studies. To be honest, I had trouble finding anything on this in terms of research, so I'm mostly relying on my memory. But, like, my layman's idea, and you can tell me how the studies support this, is like, well, it's good to think a little bit every day. Right? So I don't think it's necessarily hurting you in any way. Just maybe it's not toning your brain into shape either.
Right. So that's essentially right. So there are some studies that show basically nothing. Like there's a 2009 European study with, I think, 10-year-olds that found no evidence that games like Brain Age or Big Brain Academy actually train your brain by improving blood flow to the brain.
Why would it do that?
Apparently that's been claimed.
Okay.
But what it showed is that, it was 67 10-year-olds, some of whom did a 7-week Nintendo DS brain training, some of whom did puzzles on pencil and paper, some of whom did nothing. Basically it found that all of the groups saw improvement in math, but the DS group didn't show better memorization or logic improvement than any of the other groups.
I feel like they should have added just like another DS puzzle game.
That's true. That would have been an interesting comparison of like doing, I don't know, Sudoku on your DS.
Yeah.
But there actually are some studies that have sort of talked about that, and it's more in line with the kind of thing that you said. I think we talked about this maybe. I can't remember exactly what side quest this would have fallen under, but obviously playing games in general, or Big Brain Academy specifically, some studies do sometimes show moderate improvements in the elderly. But there's nothing really special about the brain training games. It's like you could play Tetris, you could do Sudoku, you could just talk to people, and doing any of those daily shows the same kind of cognitive improvement. So basically, if you enjoy Brain Age and the structure of it, it's just as good as doing anything else, but there's nothing particularly special about doing these particular logic puzzles in this particular way.
Except that Mr. Lobe is proud of you.
Well, exactly.
Actually, kind of negs you most of the time, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he's like, oh, your brain is perfect for being a dumb person.
Yeah, and he's like, my brain is off the charts. Ooh. When he first introduces, like, brain weighing to you. It's like, my brain can't even be measured by mortal instruments. He doesn't actually say that, but it'd be cooler.
If he said mortal instruments, yeah, that'd be pretty dark. All of a sudden, all the non-gamers are like, what?
I mean, is it really, a video game if you don't have to, like, kill God at the end, right? So, I think
You're telling me that we have to murder Mr. Lowe?
Yeah, I think that he needs to be, overthrown. I think that would have added a nice narrative element to this brain training game,
Well, as Emma picks up on here, there's basically no narrative element to this brain training game. It's just a series of mini-games, which it's a little hard in 2020 to think about how did a game like that sell so well when it's just these kind of like, quasi-scientific brain training games. But you have to remember that it was only $20. So it's a little bit easier to commit to a game that's just a bunch of silly mini-games that are selling you snake's oil, right?
Yeah. Plus the DS and the Wii were, like, dominating back then, just in terms of people owning them. So since there were more people who had the platforms, there were more people buying the games on that platform. So, and Brain Age is good for the kids that are playing Wii Sports,
It also is part of an interesting trend of especially DS games that I think must have to do with how popular they are as commuting things in Japan, is games that are meant to be played for just a little bit each day. One of the reviews of Big Brain Academy that I read complained about how basically he's like, oh, like, probably you were supposed to, like, sit down and play this game a little bit each day, but I just sat down and played through it all, and it didn't take me that long to get gold on all the mini games. It's like, okay.
Well then, isn't your brain so heavy?
Wow. Yeah, like platinum Big Brain Academy. Well done. But it's part of a trend with stuff like Nintendogs, with stuff like Animal Crossing during that time, and, eventually stuff like Wii Fit, of games that were really only meant to be played for a little bit at a time. Which is interesting now, as everyone continues to grumble about time travel and Animal Crossing on Twitter.
I mean, we're not talking about Animal Crossing, and Animal Crossing's on our list, but yeah, the phenomenon of Animal Crossing and how different people play it is interesting.
Maybe I should be time traveling in Big Brain Academy. I can't remember. I know in Brain Age you can only test once a day. I think in Big Brain Academy you can only test once a day too. So
yeah,
if you
I
mess something up, you should change the clock on your DS so you can take the test again. Gotta speed run it.
Mr. Lobe will never know that my brain used to be
never know.
Only 100 pounds just 2 hours ago. Now it is 300 pounds.
He's worried about the brain steroids. Anyway, the overall takeaway from these is they weren't scientific. You probably never should have thought they were.
But they were fun, and they made you
fun.
feel smart, and that was the important thing.
That is kind of the important part of these games, isn't it? If you weren't feeling the kind of virtuous, I'm doing something good for myself in playing these, they probably just feel like a game.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can feel like, yes, I'm exercising my brain, it does feel pretty good. It surprises me that more stuff hasn't been marketed like that. That feels like a pretty powerful marketing tool.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's still stuff that has to do with your physical fitness, right? There's still Nintendo making stuff like that.
That's true.
But I think a lot of people have just now seen through that, and there's less interest in it.
I guess that's true. I still think trying to find some way to be like, yes, Fortnite. It stimulates your brain. Not that they need more effective marketing, but, you know.
Yeah, I don't think Fortnite needs to change their marketing strategy all that much.
I think that they should have a Big Brain Academy skin.
Oh, can I play as Mr. Lobe in Fortnite? That'll get me in.
That will. Finally, Emma's been sucked in. The Mr. Lobe
I gotta grind out enough, whatever their currency is to loot box my way to the Mr. Lobe skin. That's how these people...
He has a gun that fires brains.
What?
He has a gun that fires brains. Or, better, he has a ray gun that shrinks your brain.
Yeah, and then, like all your movement is slowed down.
Well, as excellent a mashup as this is, maybe we ought to talk about the game that actually will be part of the mashup.
Yes, you're right, we should.
Which is Daemon X Machina.
Spelled Daemon.
Daemon.
As I always say it in my head, even though I know.
Like the letter Machina. Some
Capital
pronounce
X.
it key.
No. Daemon X Machina is a mech action shooter game. It's a mech game. From Marvelous. It came out on the Nintendo Switch first in September of last year, and then it also came out on Microsoft Windows in February. I first played it. They released a free demo during some direct in spring of 2019. So I had downloaded it and played it then because I was in my last semester of college and had nothing to do. What a lovely time of my life. But basically you're just, to be honest, it doesn't really give you much setup, and as far as I can tell, the story doesn't really matter. So you're just a person who is working with various mercenary groups that all have these mechs called arsenals. And you go out and you kill the enemy. I own it also, and I played like the first 3 missions today, and that's about all I've got. There's some characters, they talk at you. What are they talking about? I don't know. I was too busy shooting things with my cool mech. So that's kind of the gist of it.
One of the big complaints about this game, from what I read, is that there is a lot of story, and it doesn't do much. There are a lot of people talking at you. There are a lot of cutscenes. Some review I read was like, I love JRPGs, but this had too many cutscenes.
I'll be interested to see if there are cutscenes, because there's been one, 20-second one so far. Like, people talk to you during the gameplay, but there's been no real, scenes so far. I'm just sort of, going out and doing my thing and then coming back, and I run around the area the hub area that I'm in, thinking that there will be something else to do, but nobody will talk to me, so I just go and do the next mission. There is a dog there sometimes. So
10 out of 10.
You can't pet it or interact with it anyway. It just sort of sits there and looks at you, but it's there.
Well, for Madelyn's lore corner, I'll flesh out the story of the game just a little bit. Not that much, because I couldn't penetrate the amount of kind of useless story stuff that happens during the game, but for setup, in the world of Demon Ex Machina, the moon has hit the planet.
Oh, right, yeah.
And it's given off, like, moon mystery energy.
Mm-hmm.
And
as
that
the moon does.
The moon mystery energy turns all the artificial intelligence on the planet Earth against humans. Which was interesting to read about in conjunction with my playthrough of Nier Automata. Which this game is pretty much nothing like.
Yeah.
And like Emma said, you're this, like, mercenary member. The mercenaries are called the Outers. And you all, like, in addition to being mercenaries, like, the Outers also got special powers from the moon mystery magic. And the artificial intelligence is actually called the Arms of Immortals, or AI, which I thought was silly enough to share.
It's pretty silly.
And yeah, that's it. Otherwise, you're a mercenary. You take on mercenary jobs. There are some story missions. There are a lot of very similar mercenary missions. You fly around in a cool mech.
You sure do.
Booty.
It is a cool mech. Okay? I think so. I've been thinking for a while, like, there's, like, certain areas that I feel like video games just haven't, like, permeated as far as they could yet. And I think one of them was mechs, but I think I just haven't been looking for mech games because I think they're out there. I just don't pay attention to them.
It does seem to be, based on the comments I was reading, a bit of a, or at least it's perceived as a bit of a niche genre by people that like those games. Because Demon Ex Machina, I think, got a fair bit of press because it was a mech game for the Switch and there weren't really any.
Yeah.
So they're definitely out there, but I think it's a little bit of an old school genre.
Yeah, I was reading one review, I can't find it, so I don't know what it was, but it seemed like they thought this seemed a little bit like a spiritual follow-up to, apparently From Software used to make a mech series.
Armored Core,
that's what it was. And there's stuff like Soccer Wars is mechs. Left Alive came out sometime in the last couple years. It wasn't very good, but it had mechs in it. Trails of Cold Steel has mechs, mech fights. Basically just rock, paper, scissors, but they're there. So maybe I was a little bit hasty to think that there aren't a good amount of mech games, but it's still fun. It's still very fun to sort of jump around in this extremely mobile version of a mech in this game.
Yeah, this game apparently shares some of the same producing team as Armored Core, so it's even more of a spiritual successor, perhaps, than many of these other games that are inspired by this kind of the mech genre, pretty acclaimed game series from Software. I did get the sense from reading about it that the mech is cool, but that you have so many customization options, which is a big part of these games, and a big part of what makes the genre what it is, and the satisfaction of it. But from what I was reading, ultimately, your customization doesn't require, like, you'll put a lot of energy into it, but it's more energy than you really need to. You have tons of options, but ultimately the strategy doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
if that makes
no,
sense.
I've certainly felt that. Like, I was not really thinking about what I was doing while I was playing. I was just like, I spent a long time in the first mission while things were, like, shooting at me and missing, like, just marveling at how, like, the mech takes a few steps and then it turns on, like, its rollerblades and, like, zooms, if you keep going. And it has, like, this fun thing if you're going one direction and then go back, suddenly it does a little jump backwards to start going backwards.
Whoa.
Feels very good. But I did not feel like I had to focus on any of the enemies in the first couple missions. I just sort of shot them as they were picked up by the targeter, basically.
Which, there's certainly something to that kind of game. It's satisfying to have a powerful robot and get to shoot down evil robots.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to think of the contrast of, like you said, neither of these games this week are especially deep, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty repetitive overall, and narratively there's either none in Big Brain Academy, or it's like very what is the word that I'm looking for? Vestigial to the gameplay experience. That wasn't the word I was looking for, but it's close enough.
Tangential?
Yeah, sure. That works too. And it's like, on the one hand, that feels fine when it's a $20 DS game. But it feels harder to say to myself, yes, I'm going to spend $60 on a kind of chill robot shooter.
I think it was $40, unless I'm conflating it with something else.
It's cheaper now, but I thought it was the full price at launch, but I could be wrong.
I don't remember.
It's just interesting to me to think about, this game has pretty bold visual choices. Like you've said, the mech feels good. It's a solid entry into the genre.
I remember the demo had some frame rate problems that are not there in this full release, at least so far. So
we love a good stable frame rate. I know what that means.
I mean, after Control, if you're throwing bright colors at me, I'm just glad when it doesn't just freeze frame every once in a while.
But it does feel like the kind of game that would have gotten a glowing review 10 or 15 years ago. And now, because the story is such a mess, it's harder to ignore that piece of the game. Even if it's something that, like you said, can be completely ignored. I feel like that's
I don't know how true that is as you go deeper. This might just be, like, the beginning.
I feel like I saw it in some of the reviews, too. It was like, whatever, just try to ignore the story. But, like, and that's, like, something that I would feel fine in saying to somebody about an older, like, a retro game, to some extent. If it was, like, fun mechanic, I'd be like, whatever, just ignore the story. In a way that feels much less excusable for a new game.
See, I don't know if that's right, because my perception of retro games, at least popular ones, is either that there's not really a story, right? Like you're Mario trying to get Peach back, and you just have sort of like a motivating conceit to cover everything you're doing. Or it's something like the Final Fantasies that have incredibly complex stories. Perhaps even the older ones might consider having more complex stories than some of the newer ones.
That's true. I guess what I'm trying to say is this feels like the kind of game that threw a lot of story at it because it's 2020 and everybody wants to have a lot of story in their game. I know you haven't experienced that yet, but it seems like there's just a lot of characters and a lot of lore and stuff that doesn't really make sense. Or it just feels completely tacked on. In a way, like, that this game would probably have been more successful if there wasn't that much of a story. Like, some other reviews contrasted Armored Core, which they said, maybe the downside here is that you don't know very much about the characters. Like, you know very little about them in Armored Core. But since pretty much the only knock people had on this game was it's pretty repetitive and the story is, like, doesn't make sense, it feels like they should have just nixed the story entirely.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure that a game like this, they started with, like, the mech design and the style of it, and then built it from there, rather than any other way around. Which, of course, building from anywhere can work. It just, if you are clearly more enthusiastic about one aspect of it, but end up having other aspects of it, you can kind of tell where the development probably started from. And it was definitely, like the mech designs.
Yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, obviously these 2 weeks I relied on my playing of Big Brain Academy from however old I was when I played it, but I did still play it.
Man, how old were we when we had
Big Brain Academy? When we got it, right? I can tell you when it came out. I can tell you how old I was when it came out, but I don't.
What year did it come out, by the way?
Big Brain Academy. I did. Was released in North America in 2006.
Ah, I see.
But I don't know when we had it.
I don't know either.
I was
probably close to then.
I was not as plugged into video game release dates in 2006 as perhaps true. I am now.
Well, you were...
young.
12, 11, 12?
I'm glad you know how old I am.
I remember what year you were... See, that's the issue. I remember what year you were born, but sometimes I do have to do math to remember how old you are. And also how old I am. So, clearly I could use some Big Brain Academy.
Well, how do you want to mash these games up?
Big robots. You have to... Mr. Lobe has gone out of control. His brain, it has expanded too much. It has reached the heavens. And you must get into your brain-powered robot and use the strength of your brain to take down Mr. Lobe before the force of his neurofirings destroys humanity.
So you've just taken the already slightly less non-gamer friendly Big Brain Academy and just put it into a more gamified skin. So
yeah.
Nice.
He told us his brain could not be measured by our mortal instruments, and we did not listen.
How about Big Mech Academy?
Like a mech training school?
Yeah. Where each day you have to learn something about robotics and how to build a
mech. Like actually learning. I thought you were going to be like...
I feel I could go in a different direction. I first wanted to propose an actual education game.
So, like, for the modern age, when everybody wants to know how to, like, make robots and code and stuff.
Yes, exactly.
I see.
But it's fun because you get to do it to, like, build your own mech.
So it's like a build... So it's like those build your own robot kits, except you're actually making something that your child can get in and...
No. It's virtual. It's virtual. The mech is in the game.
Oh, okay.
To be clear, the mech is in the game.
I think it would be more fun if you could build your own real mech, but that's just me.
But how could it test that you were actually doing that, you know?
You know, in this day and age, I think what we need is small children out on the streets in self-made mechs.
Can you imagine?
I think that's what 2020 needs.
How could things get any worse? And there it is. No, I was thinking that, like, to be able to upgrade your mech in-game, you had to actually kind of learn, you know, not for real, but learn some kind of light version of the coding and robot process.
Sure. The robot process.
The robot process.
The process of robot.
Look, I haven't played the game, so I don't know.
You're right. You're just coming up with it now, so you can't have known the technological terms for the process of the robot.
Exactly. I haven't done my research yet. But if you could do Big Mech Academy that's like Fire Emblem Three Houses, but with mechs.
Yeah. I mean, I would play that. I would play the heck out of that.
That actually has pretty much nothing to do with Big Brain Academy, though, other than the words big and academy.
That's fine. You gotta, you know, there's a teacher.
Yeah, named Dr. Lobe.
Dr. Lobe? Is it Dr. Lobe? I feel like I keep calling him just Mr. Lobe.
I don't know, but he's Dr. Lobe now.
Professor Lobe. Sir Lobe.
Yes.
He's there, and, you know, there's daily tests for the mech students on their mech ability.
It's just like the Persona quizzes, just over and over and over.
Yeah.
Persona class segments. It's Persona,
there's nothing in between.
There's just no gameplay.
It's just the class.
It's that, and you can like customize your mech, and you never do anything.
No, I mean, you're right. It doesn't really take anything from Big Brain Academy besides, like, inserting an academy. But I'm just saying I would play a game in which there's a class of students who are learning how to be in mechs. And then at the end, there's a twist and a time skip, and all your mech students fight each other in mechs. I would play that.
This is not a mashup. This is now Three Houses and Demon X Machina
I want the
mashup.
next Fire Emblem to have, like, motorbikes and mechs. That's what I want.
Steampunk Fire Emblem.
Yeah.
People would be angry.
I would be, give me some more of that dubstep. I want that dubstep song turned into a game.
Oh no. Quick, before this gets further off the rails. Do you have any other mashup ideas, or are you ready to wrap this up?
I mean, which ones were we going with? Which one do we think is the strongest here?
I mean, I think Big Mech Academy is definitely the strongest. But I do also think that there's a market right now, especially right now, where there's, like, no real school for the edutainment
that's true.
Big Mech Academy.
Oh, yeah. How much you want to bet that, like, next year there's going to be, like, an explosion in, like, the edutainment market? Again?
Oh, 100%. Especially if schools open up even semi-normally in large swaths, not semi-normally, obviously, but even, like, if schools open up at all in largish swaths of the country, then maybe not. But that, you know, if not, then 100%, absolutely. Everyone's lessons will be Assassin's Creed and nothing else.
They will just, for all subjects, they will just go on tours of ancient Egypt.
It's just Assassin's Creed. We can do some Minecraft too, I guess, if we have to.
You know, I saw someone tweet, and I have no idea how serious it was, but they're saying, like, Zoom wasn't working, so we started just using Red Dead Redemption's multiplayer for our business meetings.
There was a company that did Animal Crossing for a little bit. I think mostly it's a joke.
Yeah.
They were like, can't really talk, can't share files, got distracted playing the game.
For me, it would just be that I would keep drifting off screen.
Yes.
Which, by the way, is only a problem in Animal Crossing. It doesn't happen on any of the other Switch games, so it must just have more sensitivity. But,
well, folks, this here has been another episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
If you liked what you heard this week, you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Talk This Podcast, and we're on YouTube at Talk This Sisters. So follow us there, check us out, and you'll keep all up to date on the happenings on the show and what's going on our website, which you can also see at www.talkthispodcast.com. On our website, you can see the list of games in the hat that Emma is about to virtually pull from. You can read more about us and the show, and you can also check out our blog, where you can read long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend and Split Screen, both of which are excellent uses of your stuck inside time. Plus a recap of all the anime I've been watching, and all sorts of other fun blog content. And finally, if you really enjoy the show and the show itself, and you don't want any of the stuff around the show, you just want the show, I mean, maybe you want the stuff around the show too, but you really want the show, you should subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find Talk This. So subscribe so you never miss an episode on Sundays at noon.
You know, I have one more thing to say about Demon X Machina.
Please.
That it sort of reminded me of how I felt when I started playing Astral Chain, when we did that episode.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really cool looking, and it's fun, but it just, like, I get that this story maybe gets overcomplicated and stuff, but, like, I'm so done with silent protagonists, I think. You know?
Maybe that's something for a future side quest.
Like, I feel differently about them in certain situations, but when everybody else is, like, spouting their cheesy lines all around you, and all you're doing is going, it feels, I don't understand why I should care, to be honest.
It's totally off, and it's a safe choice where there could have been a bold choice.
Yeah. Like, you know, you can make the character customizable and still give them a voice, you know? Doesn't change that. Anyway, that was my one last
bonus
note
thought
on Demon X Machina. I have tons of games to get through before I come back to that in too much detail. Speaking of games,
Pick 'em.
2 weeks from now, we'll be talking about Duke Nukem as our old game.
Nice.
And our new game will be, it's really thinking about it on this virtual disco board. We're going to talk about Katana Zero.
Duke Zero.
Katana Nukem.
Both excellent titles already. Katana Nukem feels like a Worms Armageddon
Weapon? Yeah, like katanas just fall from the sky and explode.
Yeah.
That seems right.
Well, in 2 weeks we'll be talking about those 2 games, but next week we're going to be talking about what we've been playing the last 6 weeks. It's our every 6 weeks side quest gaming wrap-up.
That is right.
So I have to go back and figure out when was 6 weeks ago, as do we all, probably.
Yeah. I've been keeping my video game journal up to date, but that doesn't really help me of, like, when I've been playing stuff, because all but, like, 2 of those entries don't have ending dates yet.
Well, it'll be an exciting adventure for all of us to learn what the 2 of us have been playing the past 6 weeks. So be sure to tune in. But until then, Emma, do you want to send the folks off with a brain-engaging mechanical farewell?
This week, I hope that your brains are strong.